What we do here is we'll take a flathead screwdriver and flex that retaining ring to remove that inner gear from the hub carrier assembly. Just flexes it up and then it just drops right in. Then we're going to move to the carrier housing, removing it off of the hub face. And that's just done with a couple of flathead screwdrivers and picks and just releasing the tension on those lock tabs and flexing them out ever so slightly so we don't break them. What will happen with a little upward pressure is it'll then pop off. And here's that inner gear that I was talking about earlier. It just pushes down and in, and then you set it off to the side. And to remove this spring, we just use a flathead screwdriver to pop it off of the outer hub locking face. A little bit of pressure here and there, working it around, and it should pop right off, no problems. The next thing we're going to pay attention to are these little extrusions on that outer face of that locking hub assembly. These align with the adjuster that you adjust for locking and unlocking on the outside, and they also align with the ramp on the inside that actually locks the hub into place. Now, this is going to be important a little bit later, but these all align up to keep everything nice and square and centered up. In this image, you can see that I've got a flathead screwdriver in between that ramp adjuster and the outer face. This section right here is actually in between two of those little extrusions, and I'm going to be putting that screwdriver in there and flexing against that. Don't worry, these things do flex quite a bit, and we're going to use that to our advantage to help disassemble this assembly. And what we're going to do is we're literally going to stick that screwdriver in between the outer housing and that ramp assembly and just flex it just enough around the extrusions on that outer housing. And again, this took me about 2.5 to 3 minutes from start to finish on this. I sped the video up so it's a little bit more tolerable to watch, but you can see I'm literally just putting the screwdriver in there, flexing it a little bit, and then working around. And it will come loose. It is a little bit of a pain in the butt, but the reason why I did this and had to do it this way was because the outer face was pretty well seized up, and the amount of force and pressure it took to rotate this thing didn't allow me to take it apart the way it actually went together. In this video, you'll see that I've highlighted small cutouts in that outer face, and that's what you actually turn to lock and unlock your hubs. That's highlighted in blue. Those little cutouts need to align with the extrusions on the actual outer housing of the hub locking assembly. The amount that it actually has to move, you can see, isn't really much. It's maybe 1/4 of an inch total, so it's a handful, maybe 10 or so degrees, if even that. In my case, it was still very difficult, as you'll see in this video coming up. You'll notice the way that I'm actually turning this is literally with a pair of pliers and just grabbing it with my hand. As I mentioned, it takes a lot of force, and you barely have to move this thing to get it lined up. However, once you do get it lined up, it doesn't take a lot of effort. I wouldn't bother with grabbing a hammer or anything like that. You can see I literally just take the wrench and just pop it on the backside, and it should pop right out. And here we can actually see what the problem is. Where I've got the pick pointing is a little groove, and in that groove is a ton of corrosion that we need to clean out. Literally, you can do this with anything. I just use a screwdriver and just clean it out as best I could because, again, this isn't a daily driving vehicle. This is just something that I'm doing for off-road stuff. So scrape it all out, clean it up, and throw some axle grease in there, and it should be good for a little bit. So now we've gotten the outer body cleaned up and everything like that. We're going to go ahead and reassemble it. But first I want you to see there's the extrusion point again. That needs to line up with the ramp, or the spring ramp, we'll say, has a little recess. That needs to line up with the inside of the housing, and then our actual adjuster ramp that we turn to lock and unlock the hubs needs to be lined up as well. Reassembly on this is not hard at all. You drop in that spring ramp in, it just falls into place, no problem. And then you take your actual lock assembly with the arrow, you're going to insert it just barely past the locking side. And then a little bit of pressure inwards, and then twist back, and it locks in place, and now you've reassembled that assembly. Don't forget when you're putting this thing back together to put the O-ring back in place and make sure that the V-cut groove is facing towards the outside face of that housing itself. Okay, now we're going to reassemble everything. You've got your cage, you've got your down gear, up gear, lock ring, washer, spring, and then your inner cog. That's all that there is to this assembly. So first things first, this guy is your down gear. It's going to drop in first. It'll only go in one way. Notice these little guys here will line up with these longer cage sections, not the lock ring sections. It's going to drop in right in nice and easy. This you can pull in and out as many times as you want. It's not like the other side, it doesn't lock it in, okay? Make sure, as you're doing this, that your inner bearing race face is here. The face of this is flat, this side is not. This is the side that goes up towards the outer section of the hub, okay? Drop it in place like such. Next up, your washer. It is sided. You'll notice that it's got wear on it. See it right there? Okay, that's the down face because it's going to be riding directly on that face. You get your spring pack, then you've got your gear face, your outer gear. This one does not matter how it goes in either. This one, however, once you put it in place, it will lock in with these little locks right here that go around the short ones. So make sure everything's in there right, nice and easy before you go snapping this bad boy in place. When you do that, you will hear it click in place, just like so. Notice it goes up and down. If I don't get my glove stuck, it'll go up and down and it'll spring back nice and easy. That's good, okay? Next step, your inner gear face or your inner cog. It's gonna go in, gonna drop in place nice and easy. Now, here comes the tricky part. You gotta make sure, if you see the land groove right up here, you gotta make sure that you can get this guy, your snap ring, in place. Easiest way I've learned to do that, hold upward pressure with one finger, as such. Take your snap ring around it, okay? Hook your one side. I'll show you how I do this. I pull up with my one finger, I push down with my index, and then I just wrap this guy around by putting light pressure all the way across. And it will walk itself on nice and easy. Boom, that's rebuilt. Your inner cog will now not fall out, okay? Your inner cog will not fall out now. But you'll notice that sometimes it goes in place, sometimes it doesn't. It's because it needs a little bit of a twist to line up, just like your regular hubs. You've now rebuilt this assembly. Now the last piece of the puzzle before we go putting these two assemblies together is our ring. This guy snaps in place, small side towards your outer hub. And it's kind of a little bit of a bear. Just like that, walk it on, nice and easy, okay? Then you take your outer cage that you just rebuilt and push it right on nice and easy, okay? Notice, I had one break. It happens, it ain't that big of a deal, okay? Now, free spin, notice I hold this guy spins nice and easy. I lock it in place, boom. Now I can't lock it. That's how that assembly works, okay? This outer thing will spin, the inner will not. That's good, that's what we want.